Okay, this hopefully will be interesting. This is part 8 of our 2025 refresh, and we're going to focus on configuring the campaign dialer. It's a version 2 of the campaign dialer, and the principal difference between the versions is several fold. One is that the campaign dialer will make very liberal use of AWS customer profiles. So you must enable customer profiles for the campaign dialer to be really useful. And if you don't know what customer profiles are, I would say once they're enabled, every contact inbound to your call center or outbound from your call center, whether it's a voice call, an email, a task, an SMS message, a chat, these are all contacts and they accumulate forever. Uh, and let's say you're an agent, you get an inbound phone call, and your customer profile pops up. Initially, it's only going to display the caller ID that it captured, but it will give you the opportunity to edit and add a name, first name, last name, an address, give it an account number associated with a previously open case. Customer profiles are, in my opinion, AWS is emerging a full-on CRM solution. But for purpose of this discussion, let's just say it's a customer record and you have the ability to add data to those customer records, to upload lists that become part of the customer profiles and are the data source for your outbound campaigns. Now, there are two sides to the contact center. I said there were several changes in version 2. The second change was that previously you set up campaign dialing through Amazon Pinpoint. For all I know, under the hoods, it may still be using Pinpoint, but in terms of your ability to create campaigns and manage them, you can now do that all inside Amazon Connect, and you'll see that as we go through the tutorial. No more going over to Pinpoint to get things going. However, you still have a situation in which someone needs to have privileges in the AWS console. Uh, so when you set up your instance, you're going to ultimately get to a screen that looks something like this, and you'll have configuration here that is outside of the contact center, impacts the contact center, but someone with AWS console privileges will need to access this. And I think that maybe that's the only uh, negative, if I can say anything negative, that would be it. But it's a significant improvement over version 2. When I say negative, it's just typically the people who are working in a contact center, even if they're a system administrator, they don't generally have access to the AWS console. But that being what it is, we're going to have to set up outbound campaigns. To set up out campaigns, we're going to also have to enable customer profiles. So we'll take a real-time look at that, but we need to focus on the fact that as you enable customer profiles, you are creating domains, um, and these domains will be the source of your data ingestion for purposes of the campaign dialer. Now, when you're setting up a new Amazon Connect instance, you're going to see these check marks will be uh, selected by default. So by default, AWS is going to enable customer profiles and enable emails and gives you the opportunity to change these default data storage S3 buckets, if you will, to other buckets that you might have existing or just where you want to store your data that's different from the defaults that are being created. So we're going to take a look at this so that you can understand what happens when you enable the customer profiles as it relates to data sources. So we'll take a real-time look at that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about um, configuring campaigns in greater detail. Okay, let's just quickly spin up an instance so I can show you the outside the contact center configuration parameters that you have to be aware of. So I'm going to spin this up real quick. We're going to store the users in the local. I'll give it a name. I'm going to say no administrator. And we're going to allow inbound and outbound phone calls. That's cool. Okay, so here's the first decision. Now, when you're setting up a brand new instance, as we're doing here, you'll notice down here that your logs are being established for you, and enable customer profiles and enable email are also check marked. This check mark will cause the auto configuration of these facilities. So for purposes of discussion, I'm going to uncheck these so that we can see what that setup entails. So when we go through this, we're looking here, everything's cool. Let's go ahead, create the instance. This is going to take a minute or two. Okay, we've built this guy. Let's take a look at him. So keep in mind, we're outside of the Amazon Connect instance. We're not inside the contact center yet. So over here on the left side, you'll see email is a new option, outbound campaigns. Um, Previously, before version 2, you did your outbound campaigns through AWS Pinpoint. Now it is embedded in the Amazon Connect instance, and that's what we're here to talk about. But all of your outbound campaigns are going to be heavily dependent on customer profiles. Let's click customer profiles, and you can see here that down here, which is data sources, we have none. We're going to enable customer profiles. You have the choice of creating a new domain or use an existing domain. Let's call this learning stuff console. That'll be our domain name. And then you can select the type of customer profiles that you want to create. There's subtle differences between these. I'm not going to dwell on this right now. It's just important for you to know that customer profiles are a very specific uh, requirement for outbound campaigns. So we're going to need an encryption key. I've got several created already. I'll just go ahead and use one of them. And now you'll see that we have enabled customer profiles. And down here, you'll see that we have a data source. Now, when customer profiles are enabled, every contact in the system and out of the system, when a call comes in, when a call goes out, email, SMS, whatever, that's a contact, and it creates a contact trace record. That contact trace record has some prescribed fields. Typically, if you got an inbound phone call, your CCP might display the caller ID of that incoming phone call, and then you could edit your customer profile that is presented to you now that it's been enabled as part of your workspace, and you can add a customer name, account number, addresses, etc. Uh, Adding a name now enables you to put that in your contact flow such that if that person calls back in, you can actually greet them by name. But what's important here is we now have a source of customer profiles In this case, it's coming exclusively from the Amazon Connect contact center. Now you can go ahead and add data sources, and these data sources might include, you might have a Salesforce deployment, ServiceNow, Shopify, Zendesk, or you could go ahead and say, I have got my own data. It's in an S3 bucket, and you can go browse and find your bucket and go ahead and add that. That's a bucket that happened to have a spreadsheet in it with some customer information we'll look at a little bit later. And you can also set the ingestion date. In other words, don't import data that's older than such and such. And at this point, we now have a second data source being created. It's giving you an opportunity to either auto-generate mapping to the predefined fields that are in customer profiles, and they're pretty common fields. I mean, name, address, account numbers, things that are fairly generic for a customer record. And you can map your data to those fields. You can use an existing one, etc. I'm going to go ahead and it's generating the mapping, taking the data that I had in that bucket and mapping it. Here you can see the various fields. Address 1 in the source document is being mapped to attributes.address1 in the customer profile. And you can go through it, email address maps to email address, first name to first name, so forth. If you had some strange name here, you could just use this as a way to map to the standard fields in the customer profile database. So we'll go ahead here and add the data source. And what you'll see now is that we have two customer profile data sources. We have Amazon Connect contact details, and we have Amazon S3 because I want to pull data from here. Had you had Salesforce, you might see that here as well. So these are just sources of information that are populating our our Amazon Connect customer profiles. Okay, having said that, let's go to outbound campaigns. This is a new feature. There was high volume calling in previous instances. If I say activate this, I'm going to go through this process here. Now, this is a new capability in version 2. It's called version 2. And if you have an older instance before, let's say, 2025, um, this may not be there, but there will be an upgrade button that will enable you to add this functionality. So as you can see here, it's going to ask us to enable the campaigns, enable the delivery modes, and integrate our data sources. So again, I'm going to select a previously used key. You could create a key. You can't change this key after it's applied. And as we're setting up and going through the campaign, we're going to select delivery modes. Basically, what we're looking there is it's going to say, okay, in your Amazon Connect instance, you have the following phone numbers, you have some SMS numbers, and you have email addresses. And then, of course, when we get to integrated data sources, it's going to enable us to bring in those data sources that we just looked at under customer profiles. So the takeaway here is that Amazon Connect outbound campaigns is heavily dependent on customer profiles. So as you can see, this is all getting filled in now. We just spun this instance up so you know there's no email or SMS or voice. Later on, when we mature the instance itself, these things will fill in. Managed data sources, you would expect that we're now going to go in here. Oh, and voila, we see another data source has been added, Amazon Connect outbound campaigns. When we go through the rest of the tutorial and we create a campaign, that campaign is going to segment, uh, that campaign is going to segment, and what's the word segment mean here? It just that we're going to cut up our data and we're going to pull it from all of the Amazon Connect customer profile data sources and get some subset of that, whether it came from Salesforce, whether it came from contact records, whether it came from my Amazon S3 data source. And that will then be in this Amazon Connect outbound campaigns. This will become more clear to you when we actually configure a campaign. Also notice here that it's still pending. This will eventually turn to active and have a date over here. But again, the takeaway for this discussion is that outbound campaigns requires customer profiles. Okay, by way of review, two sides to the configuration. Some of the configuration takes place in the AWS console. This includes configuring customer profiles. We're going to enable outbound campaigns. We're going to enable the delivery modes. So you can have a campaign that delivers email, sends text messages, has interactive voice or message voice. And I'll show you that configuration. And then we need to integrate our data sources. So these configuration elements happen outside of the Amazon Connect instance. And as I've noted before, it's the only challenge I see because in a contact center, the folks in the contact center, supervisors, agents, even the administrator, uh, may most likely do not have privileges to work in the AWS console. So someone on the IT side of the staff is going to be involved. But having said that, once these things are configured, we can then go into the contact center and we can create a campaign. Creating a campaign involves creating segments. And what is a segment? A segment is when we go into our data sources and we select which uh, customer profiles in those data sources we want to use to create our campaign list. Okay, and that can include uh, data that you're pulling from Salesforce or Zendesk or Cases or your own S3 bucket. In this example, we have an S3 bucket that we've configured, and we're going to upload a CSV file into that bucket, and that will be one of the sources of data. And as we create our segment, we'll take these 2 or 3 different data ingestion points and customize the list we want to build, and that will be referred to as the segment. We'll set the delivery mode. By that I mean, are we going to make an outbound phone call, have the call transferred to a live agent, or are we going to transfer it to maybe a pre-recorded message? Are we going to have an email campaign? There's no rule that says you can't have an email campaign. You can also have an SMS campaign. So then we'll set the contact flow. If you work with Amazon Connect, you know that contact flow is the flow from the time the contact enters the system and how it's going to flow through your system, ultimately getting to a queue and perhaps a live agent. So we will select those elements. We'll select the source phone number. We'll make a decision between predictive and progressive dialing. Predictive meaning I'm going to make this outbound phone call and I am relatively confident there will be an agent available based on statistics. Uh, if there is no agent available, that customer is going to end up in queue and probably hang up. That's my personal problem with predictive dialing. It is useful if you've got the resources and your statistics are appropriately aligned with those resources. Progressive dialing, I like that in this instance because we're going to not make an outbound call until we know there is an agent available to handle that call. So in our example, we'll be using progressive dialing. You set the communications per day and week. You know, I want this campaign to run on Monday from 10 to 1, on Tuesday, a different time, maybe not at all. You're going to lay out that schedule. You're going to set some reattempt rules. If I hit a busy signal or I hit a non-working number, what do I want to do? How should I handle that? And you'll see that in as we do it live. You set the calling times. You start your schedule. You can either run it now. By the way, when they say run it now, that means 5 minutes from the time you hit that button, or do you want to do it later? So with that introduction to the configuration, let's go back into the call center and take a look at a real-time configuration. Okay, let's configure an outbound campaign. You're going to go left side here, select outbound campaigns, and it'll show you a list of previous campaigns, which, by the way, you can um, duplicate. So if you have an existing campaign, you just go ahead and duplicate it, but we're going to do it from scratch. So let's create the campaign. We'll give it a name, 03, 05, 20, 25, R2. Um, Here you have a decision to make. We're going to focus on customer segments, customer events. We won't drill down in this tutorial, but a quick overview. You can have a situation in which changes in a customer profile can cause an event to trigger an outbound campaign. You might have, for example, one of your customer opens a new ticket. That act of opening that ticket is an event, and that event can cause you to launch a campaign. The campaign might be something as simple as firing off a thank you email, but we're going to focus on customer segments. So when you create a segment, you're basically segmenting, slicing from your database of customer profiles, including those that you may upload or have uploaded, and you're going to go ahead and select that segment. You need to create one if you don't have one that exists. So if we go ahead and create a segment here, you once again will be asked to name it. This is my thank you for your business campaign. And I want sent to new customers. And the audience group, now the audience group, you're going to select, this will always be present, all profiles from customer profiles. If you check that box, it's going to make contact with everybody in your database, all of your databases that are part of your customer profile database management. Uh, or you can select a previous segment. I'm going to select a segment temporarily. We're creating a segment. I'm going to come back and probably update this. But at any rate, go ahead and create your segment. And therefore, it'll exist now under the list of segments. And if you go back to your outbound campaigns, create the campaign. Once again, give it a name. And this time we'll select the segment. Again, segment is just that. It is a segment of your database that you have identified and created this list. Communications mode, let's go ahead and take a look at that. That's your assisted voice in this example, but you could have had automated voice. So assisted voice, we make the outbound phone call. The call comes in, it's sent to an agent. In automated voice, you make the outbound phone call, and when the customer answers, you play a pre-recorded message. You can set up email campaigns. You can set up text message campaigns. We're going with agent assisted. Once you do that, you're going to be asked to identify the contact flow. What is a contact flow? It's the workflow. When you have an inbound telephone number reaching your contact center, you have to say, how am I going to route this? And that routing of that phone call is based on a contact flow. And that contact flow I've set up one here called very cleverly inbound from campaign. Uh, then you within that contact flow, you may have multiple queues, one for support, one for sales. I have named one campaign queue. Again, if you're routing phone calls, might have multiple campaigns running simultaneously. Here's my win back team. Here's my new account team. And those campaigns needed to be routed accordingly. You will then select your source phone number from the list of phone numbers on your instance. I've selected one. Next is your dialing mode. How do you want this to work? Predictive or progressive? Predictive means I'm going to place an outbound call based on the fact that I statistically predict that there will be an agent available here by the time this call is completed. Now, you need sample data, and the system is going to create a model and understand how long it takes to process a phone call and other characteristics. And at that point, it's going to make phone calls outbound based on its prediction that an agent will be available. If an agent's not available, then that customer is going to be sitting at a customer hold, and of course, that's they're probably going to hang up. So I prefer progressive. Progressive means don't place the outbound call until you know an agent is available to take that call. Down here, call classification. In the contact flow, you can have call progress detect, which will enable you to separate a human answering the phone from a voicemail system answering the phone. What this enables you to do is to say, if a voicemail answers the phone and I hear a prompt, I want the call to be handled differently. Obviously, if you reach a voicemail system, we don't want to waste an agent's time with that, but we might want to leave a pre-recorded message, and you can have that handled by your contact flows. So here again, we're going to turn this off because it takes time to make that analysis. Using progressive, I want the call placed when I know an agent is available. And worst case, if the system reached the voicemail, you know, will have to be left by the agent because we're going to transfer the call to the agent. Under advanced options, we need to figure out the dialing capability. Now, if you've got a call center that's handling inbound calls, you may not want to have 100% of your resources dedicated to campaign dialing or to this campaign in particular. If you have multiple campaigns, you might want to split up your resources, and that's where you set your percentage of resources here, as well as agents. You know, if you've got a call center full of agents and they're also handling other things, you may want to not, say 100% of my agents, set something smaller. Let's go ahead and say next. At that point, it wants to know how many communications per day. Now, if we're processing an outbound calling list for new business solicitation, you probably want to set this to one, and we only got to call them one time, right? Max communications per week, I'm setting this at one. Um, I think that you can see the ramifications of changing these statistics. You must have at least a limit of one to cause the dialer to take action. Under reattempt rules, we're saying, what do we want to do if we reach a busy number? What do we want to do if we get a unanswered phone call? How would we like to handle that? Voicemail, we've already discussed. So let's go ahead and select those two. Now it's saying, okay, on a busy, I want to call again, and I want to do that. I want to try again in 15 minutes. If it's unanswered, I actually want to send an email, and it's going to ask me then to fill in some information. The outgoing email address. This was configured when you set up your Amazon Connect instance and you set up email. So we've got an email address in the sales department, friendly sender's name. I say welcome to Dr. VoIP. The email template, again, something that was previously set up. I have a template that says thank you from sales, and we're going to use the version, the currently active version of that template. Go ahead and now we'll go to next. Okay, at this point, they're asking, do you want to be conscious of the time zone? Now, clearly, if it's 9 o'clock in the morning in New York, do we really want to be placing a phone call to someone in California where it's only 6 a.m.? Probably not. So what this is going to do is give you the opportunity to select your calls based on area code and postal code, or just the area code, or just the postal code. Postal code is probably more appropriate. Area codes, I don't know if you get a cell phone nowadays in California and you move to New York, you're still going to have the California's area code number. So area codes are not really good for this. You could also have selected use a standard time zone and then selected the time zone you want to use. We're going to make our phone calls based on the postal code. The active communication time. So here you're going to say apply to all delivery modes, and you're going to, you could have separated out, have your email handled separately from your voice, but let's go ahead and say we can choose days of the week that we want this campaign active. I'm just, for simplicity, going to say Monday. I'm going to say from 0900 a.m. to 05, excuse me, to 5 o'clock p.m. And we'll make our emails follow the same pattern. You can set up exceptions to that. This is optional, so if you want to break out some segment of your segment and put it in the exception category so it doesn't follow this, you can do that. And we're going to go to next. At this point, we're given the opportunity to revisit all of the steps that we've configured, double check everything. You can edit it if you want to change it. And at this point, we're going to say publish. And when you publish it, it's going to ask you, do you want to start now or do you want to start later? Even if you say start now, it's going to take 5 minutes before it actually kicks off. So start now means start 5 minutes from now. You can set this to repeat, but you must give it an expiration date. So after 2025 on March the 4th at 12 a.m., this campaign can no longer be done. At that point, we should be able to publish this. We've got an error in valid contact flow. How did I do that? Let's find the contact flow. So I'm going to have to go back here to where we set the contact flows. Oh, here's a missing. Forgot to say apply. Let's go back one more. Contact flows, the queue, the contact flow, that all looks good to me. Let's continue, continue, continue. Published. Okay, this time we've got published successfully. Okay, so at this point, that campaign has kicked off, and 5 minutes from now, phone is going to start ringing. I actually even have one of the numbers that it's going to call here in my little voice over IP client here. So you'll start to see phone calls ringing in. However, you can go to the campaign and it will bring up, you can stop the campaign if you want. You can duplicate this campaign and then edit some of the configuration. And you can view your analytics. So here, this brings up a dashboard that's going to show you your telephony campaign performance and text and email. And you also have the ability to add additional widgets. Any of these, you can add them to the dashboard. And that pretty much summarizes how to configure and manage your campaigns.